Welcome, serendipitously cerebral viewers, to the show where we won't answer your burning questions like, have you truly known love? What it is to be smitten with someone so deeply you'd give 1,000 worlds for them? To find out they too share those feelings for you. And you realize, in real time, what you've known all along, that you are not enough for them? Have you had to watch their heart break in their eyes when you told them you couldn't give them those 1,000 worlds, that you weren't enough? Welcome to Cartoon Gateway, the show where I talk about the average trials and tribulations of a cartoon fan. I'm your host, David Hollander. This is going to be the last episode of Cartoon Gateway, asterisk, for this season. I've talked about pretty much everything I've wanted to talk about on this show, except for the things that were too short to sustain a whole episode. I've gone through every topic I could use on this show, and I need time to refill the idea bucket. So what am I going to do for a season finale then? I could do an episode on finales of cartoons, that'd work.
Oh, look at that. It's a concept of subtlety. I don't see it either.
I don't really have anything else to talk about. I wanted to do an episode on banned cartoons or episodes, but that was just an excuse to talk about Nightmares Recycled from the 2003 TMNT series, which barely counts. Not banned, more like unfinished. I could talk about kiddie shows like Word Girl and Wonder Pets, but Athena P still has a YouTube channel, still talks about those shows, and that channel hasn't gone anywhere, so why would I try? I could talk about Smiling Friends or maybe Centaur World. Cool. Perfect. How do I get an episode out of that? See what I mean? I'm grasping at crazy straws over here. What more could I say about Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles besides it's a really good show? Especially since I already said that. Do you want me to make a Bob the Builder episode? I could do that, but no one would sit through it. Would you sit through a video about that? I'm trying to gauge my audience, but that's hard when the only comments I get are just things like, this is halal mode. You can't blame me for getting bored or running out of topics for the show. There's more combinations in a deck of cards than there are atoms on Earth, but Omaha Hold'em still gets pretty boring after a while. I'm calling this season finale the Stream of Consciousness episode. No, this doesn't mean I'm talking about streaming services. When I say stream of consciousness, I mean my thoughts. These are all of my disorganized thoughts for stuff I wanted to talk about on the show over the last 10 episodes, but never had time for. Is there a theme? No. Consistency? I hope so. This is my way of saying, hey, I had a good time making this, but I have no way of consistently making more without the series becoming very pointless or burning myself out. So it's a look into the timeline where this show became useless. No structure, just my stupid little thoughts in this crummy little show because I want to talk about stuff. If I make more of this show, like don't expect it to be consistent series-wise, you know, like how I usually release batches of episodes. Maybe expect like one episode every 6 months if we're lucky. Lower your expectations. Can't thank you all enough for putting up with me for 10 episodes. So here's my Stream of Consciousness. Transition. I should have done an episode on music in cartoons. I don't mean like music that's made for cartoons, like theme songs or original songs or the Phineas and Ferb soundtrack. Yeah, I mean licensed music. You know, when a show gets a pre-existing song and uses it for whatever. For instance, Sweet Victory is practically synonymous with SpongeBob for how it was used in the episode Band Geeks. You know, that kind of thing? Though above all, there's two shows that I'd say have the best use of licensed music: American Dad and Regular Show. I'll start with the one everyone knows first. Regular Show mostly uses songs from the 70s and 80s as such, which resulted in one of the most unique soundtracks for a cartoon at the time, and they're pretty much always fitting. Some standout examples, Ballroom Blitz, such a perfect fit for the episode TGI Tuesday that I was convinced for years they just made their own song. Their Christmas episode was already 12 times more epic than it needed to be, and the fact that they used Carol of the Bells as recorded by Savatage upped that to 18 times more epic than it needed to be. Mississippi Queen, it's one of the most iconic sequences in the show. Holding Out for a Hero, almost as good as when Shrek 2 did it, which is high praise because nobody's done that song better than Shrek 2. Regular Show's use of Forever Young resulted in one of the most seriously underrated sequences in the show. I don't know how it took them until the season 7 finale to use Here Comes a Regular. I am 90% positive most of the show's budget went into them being able to play the entirety of Through the Fire and Flames. And of course, David Bowie's Heroes in the finale. Literally, the only thing wrong with this soundtrack is that they somehow never used Come On Eileen. That song. Seriously, how many opportunities did it have to use that? It must have been at least 12. I could go on about this, but because everyone already knows this, I won't. Let's talk about American Dad now, who also used the Savatage versions of Carol of the Bells in one of their Christmas specials. Yeah, they make the best Christmas specials. Like, I should have done an episode on Christmas specials, or at least American Dad's Christmas specials. I don't think there's a single time where American Dad used a licensed song, and I said that's not fitting at all. It's almost always a perfect fit, you know? See the Big Man Crying, Lady in Red, Fortunate Son, Over and Over, Kickstart My Heart, a ton of stuff by My Morning Jacket, The Touch, Shenandoah, which is a deep cut if I've ever seen one, Classical Gas, and a ton more we don't need to mention. I don't know another way to say this. Every time the crew of American Dad licenses a song for an episode, you can count on it to be insanely fitting, or at least a good song. There's maybe one instance in the whole show where that wasn't the case, but even then, small potatoes. It was the episode Fantastic Voyage, all right? I assume it's fine for me to mention the exception by name. Whatever, both shows have great music and I love them both for it, among other reasons. Transition! What is the point of the Really Loud House? I know, not a cartoon, but it's a spin-off of a cartoon, stay with me. The live-action Loud House holiday special, that made sense. Something different from normal, something off the side. Neat. But to then make a follow-up to it that's a live-action series, this isn't like most normal live-action remakes we get, because the Loud House is still airing. So you've got a cartoon and a live-action version of the same show airing at the same time? Why? Won't that just confuse kids? Yeah, I know the Loud House is Nickelodeon's second favorite child, but at least the SpongeBob spin-offs we've gotten had different settings or premises than the original show. The Really Loud House is just more of the Loud House, which I'd get if there weren't more Loud House, but there is. Heck, at least the Casa Grandes focuses on a different group of characters. All the Really Loud House does is focus on the same group of characters, except now they're live action. So get ready for the show to either chug along in real time or recast everyone every couple of years because time moves faster than a filming schedule. Not dunking on the show by any means. Like, I want to make it clear, I don't have any bile for the actual cast and crew themselves. If you want more Loud House stuff, it's an option. It just baffles me that it exists, you know? I mean, then again, live action remakes of cartoons befuddle me in general. It's like, hey, let's take this thing everyone likes, but is a medium that is inherently less expressive and more expensive. I just don't get it. Transition. I think I've let it slip on this series once or twice. I don't like talking about anime, or that the show shouldn't be used to talk about anime, even though I have brought up things like Dragon Ball or Spy Family. I try to steer away from that most of the time, I should probably explain why that is, because to an outsider, I might look insane. So, why don't I talk about anime? Do I hate it? Am I a closet weeb? Not really, if only because closet weeb implies I try to hide that I like this stuff. Yeah, I like some anime, big old some in there, because I recognize this stuff isn't for everyone. So if it's all animated stuff, why not talk about it here? After all, the literal translation of anime from Japanese to English is just cartoon, or at least animation, so surely that stuff counts, right? Well, no, as I've been told. See, every time I ask someone outside of this sphere if anime counts as cartoons, the answer seems to be yes. Why wouldn't it be? Whenever I ask an anime fanatic about it, they look at me like I've grown two heads. Of course anime isn't cartoons, anime is a genre, totally separate from cartoons. Okay. How? Because anime reflects Japanese culture, you idiot. Fine, but Bluey is made in Australia, and nobody says Australian animation isn't its own entirely different thing. It's just Australian cartoons. Same with other parts of the world. Russian cartoons, British cartoons, French cartoons, American cartoons. We are not the exception. We don't do this with any other culture, so why is Japan an exception? Now, I can totally understand this. It's just a bunch of Americans with superiority complexes gatekeeping their hobbies and interests. I'm not afraid to stick it to those kinds of jerks before, so why fold now? Well, it's not just a single anime jerk fan that I've talked to. It's every anime fan I have talked to. Imagine an entire group of people banded together just to gaslight you and make you feel like an idiot for asking what is probably a reasonable question. There is a scene in Spy Family where Anya says she got something from anime. A line is literally translated as cartoons. Am I going insane? Does this make any sense? Anime is made the exact same way as a cartoon. It's basically the same medium. Why aren't these the same thing? It's like Pepsi versus Coke, but even less distinction. Look, if you've wondered why I try not to talk about anime on the show, it's because I'm genuinely unsure if it counts. Either anime is this glorious genre above us all, or it's the trash beneath my boot. And in either case, it's separate from cartoons for very poorly established reasons. And here's the thing, people might think, okay, so anime is just its own thing. Can we accept that as its own thing and move on? Well, Kind of, but you see the problem, right? If anime is a separate thing from cartoons, then there's two possibilities. You try to get into it, but aren't allowed to because of the superiority complex fans I've been talking about, and you thus end up with the average outsider's low opinion of anime, or you're allowed into this cult-like group, and you suddenly have a low opinion of American animation and cartoons because congrats, you now have a superiority complex. If anime fans want their thing to be separate from cartoons, fine, but don't be surprised if everyone else on the outside considers it inherently lesser than regular cartoons. And I don't want that because there's plenty of anime that I love. The idea that these two entities can remain separate but equal is a fallacy, and the sooner we make up our minds about it, the sooner we can establish equality amongst both. We should be able to look at one in the same light as the other, but until that day, I guess I'm just not allowed to. Did you expect to watch this episode and get a verbal reference to a landmark civil rights case? This is why I'm ending the show here for now. The jokes are getting weird on me. Transition. I didn't notice this as a kid, but in the Bob the Builder episode where it shows how Bob met all of his machines, Scoop was just behind a fence with a bunch of other excavators. It never clicked for me that Bob going to the factory to pick up an excavator was more like going to a kennel for a puppy. I mean, that's funny. This is why I didn't make a Bob the Builder episode, because it'd just be me pointing out stuff like that. You know, I've got no problem with CG animation whatsoever, but why are we using it for cartoons and TV shows? Why are entire shows made in CG? I get that it's a cool technology, but TV grade CG generally doesn't look as good as the stuff you see in films or even video games sometimes. Look at Kung Fu Panda 2, then look at Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness. These things came out from the same franchise around the same time, but the movie looks way better than the show, and this is pretty much always the case. Not to say shows made with CG look bad, just that to affordably use CG for a TV show, the animation generally gives everything the same kind of plastic-ish look. You know what I mean? Beware the Batman, Green Lantern the animated series, Fanboy and Chum Chum, even the 2012 TMNT reboot. These shows don't look bad, but they've all got this same look to them that can make them look really cheap next to a film CG. And that's fine, I get why they look cheaper, because they are. I mean, not always. Transformers Prime had a budget of like $1 million per episode at one point, but like I don't know if that's going in the episode. I have to fact check that.
The show's budget, which at one point was as high as $1.6 million an episode.
Counterpoint, we haven't really seen a technological improvement to this in about a decade. Megamind Rules looks like it came out in 2012. Film CG has done nothing but improve, but TV CG has kinda stagnated. I don't mean to dunk on the hard work of 3D animators, because I know this is difficult and impressive work that I could never do. I'm just saying, look at the jump between quality from Transformers Beast Wars to Transformers Prime, then look at the jump between Prime and Transformers Earthspark. There's clearly some difference, but the jump isn't that notable when compared to the 90s CG. It doesn't look bad, but if there hasn't been a major quality jump in about a decade, why are we still bothering with the technology? I'm not complaining, I'm just asking questions. Transition! You'd think that for a guy who's an animation fanatic and who's been to film school for ages that I might have done an episode on indie animation at some point. I'm not Corpo Scum yet, so why haven't I made an episode about indie animation? Well, simple answer, I made this show to make cartoons appeal to everyone. I know this is a field where it can seem hard to get into if you're a certain age or if you're scared off by the rabid online community. Like, I get that. And while I love a lot of independently made stuff, there's 3 reasons I tend to cover more mainstream things instead. 1, if I made an episode that was just, ooh, wow, look at the stuff the weird people made. They aren't making real cartoons, they're making independent work, look at them! Then I'm just being part of the problem if I do that. Animation is animation. And people treating independently made and produced stuff like web animations and such as something other or lesser is just reductive. I don't want to do that. 2, while not every indie project is like this, I found that there's a level of pretension around a lot of independently made things, especially film. Every time a mainstream success comes along and reminds people that animation is art, there's always some jerk that's like, where were you people when Marcel the Shell with shoes on was debuting at film festivals? You're fake fans. You don't really love animation. And honestly, that's just gatekeeping. I made the show to do the opposite of gatekeep. If you want to gatekeep animation as a whole, be my guest, but don't be surprised when no one takes it seriously because you didn't let them into the clubhouse. 3, this is wholeheartedly a me thing. It's not a generalization. This is a me thing I'm about to get into here. But if you didn't know, I'm a writer. I like to write stuff, screenplays, cartoons, you know it. This is a career path I want, to make stuff that I want to see. And I swear, being a creative person with any kind of aspirations has absolutely ruined the way I see independently made animation, especially web series and the like. Like the moment I see a cartoon hit the internet and become successful, I think, great. But with the indie stuff, there's always a little little stupid part of me that's always gonna be going, I hope this fails, so when I hit the scene, there's less competition. I don't want anyone to fail. But this dumb, intrusive thought in my head makes me way too jealous to reliably talk about indie animation, especially if I have something lined up that ended up being a little similar. Yeah, and you know, I've had to cut projects and things I've invested years into because some much more motivated person did something first. Like, until I figure out how to control that stupid little part of my brain, I can't reliably review indie stuff like The Amazing Digital Circus or Hell of a Boss. I don't trust that I'm seeing all the positives or that the negatives I'm seeing are really there, and it's better to keep my mouth shut about them than to let an overtly biased opinion get out there. Like, I never said I was a good person. I'm a project. Why don't more people talk about Harvey Beaks? Does anyone even remember this show? It was made by C.H. Greenblatt, the guy who made Chowder and would go on to make Jellystone. It was basically the first thing Nickelodeon made in the 2010s that got positive critical reception. Keep in mind, up until this point, Nickelodeon was on a streak of poorly received shows like Planet Sheen, Tough Puppy, Sanjay and Craig, and Breadwinners, plus a bunch of action shows and DreamWorks shows that basically didn't air, all while SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents hit some of their lowest lows at this point. Then comes Harvey Beaks out of nowhere, and it's not loud or gross or ugly. It's pleasant, cute, and wholesome. And the public kind of ate it up because the network's reputation was that bad at the time. It was basically the first show Nickelodeon had in ages that was both good and didn't fly under the radar. Maybe nobody talks about it because we got The Loud House a year later, which eclipsed Harvey Beaks in both ratings and popularity. Or maybe because it moved to Nicktoons, that side thing Nickelodeon has up and running. Yeah, I've always found Nicktoons a fascinating case study. It's the receptacle for shows that Nickelodeon is canceling, like the Mirror Universe version of Boomerang. One's a revival for older shows and the other's a death sentence for newer shows. Actually, on the subject, apparently, C.H. Greenblatt went on some kind of rant on Twitter that's since been deleted where he expressed frustration about how Nickelodeon was basically not airing his show and moving it to a different network without telling him. I mean, maybe that's the reason the show's kind of been buried. Look, take that anecdote about the Twitter thing with a massive grain of salt, because it's really hard to know what was actually said. And Wikipedia can only tell me so much secondhand. But apparently, whatever was said, this had severe repercussions from Greenblatt's career. You know, in fact, rumor has it that Greenblatt was sort of blacklisted from television for a while, which, if true, it's kind of a pathetic showing on the part of the industry. Like, seriously, you're gonna blacklist a guy for being angry you're not airing a show he made for you? Because to my untrained, uninformed ear, it just sounds like, to me, his only crime in this instance is that he wasn't told stuff he should have been told, and I'm hesitant to blame a guy for that. I mean, then again, I can't seem to find this alleged rant he apparently went on, so maybe there's something I'm missing. Forget it. This is devolving into a gossip column. I don't want to dig up old wounds. I'm just going over stuff for completeness' sake. The point is, Harvey Beaks is a nice little show. Dare I say, a hidden gem in Nickelodeon's catalog. I get why it's hard to find nowadays, because for some reason companies consider it cool to delete the products of hardworking people, but I don't get why no one talks about it anymore. We all remember how bad Nickelodeon's reputation was at the time. I'm just gonna say it. I don't think The Loud House would have been nearly as successful without this show. No one would have given The Loud House a chance if not for Harvey Beaks coming along a year prior and giving some goodwill back from the viewing public. This thing is a cozy glimpse into a world where Nickelodeon catered to more than just SpongeBob and briefly course-corrected from a half-decade of poor decisions. Like, check it out if you're curious. Transition! I guess since I complained about Real Film Talk doing an episode on X-Men 97 before me, without me, before I got back, I guess I should go over my thoughts on that show. I mean, I've got not much to say about the original series that it's a revival of, other than it's my least favorite X-Men show. Like, I know there's only two other options, but I grew up with the other two, and they at least had good audio quality, or not stilted dialogue. Even the animation on the original X-Men animated series wasn't that great for the time. Batman the Animated Series beat the X-Men to screens by a month and styles on it in terms of animation. And of all the X-Men cartoons, the 90s one was the only one that actually had an ending that didn't leave a ton of unresolved stuff. So it feels weird that Disney chose the one which was completed to be revived. Like, I get nostalgia, but like, Wolverine and the X-Men deserved a chance is my point. But in terms of 97 alone, I have no complaints. What? I only had two major gripes with the original show: the voice acting quality plus dialogue and the animation. This revival fixes both of those things. Ergo, I have no complaints. This is what all revivals should be. Fix what needs fixing, update for modern sensibilities, and go. Okay, well, I do have one complaint. Spoiler warning for X-Men 97, though you had months to watch the show, so really this is on you for not being a diligent viewer. I don't like that they're setting up bringing Gambit back to life after the death they gave him. The guy had an arc with an ending. Why can't we leave that be? I miss when death meant something in these shows. I'd rather have a good story he was part of than have him back at this point, especially since he was a last-minute addition to the series anyway. Poetically, it makes sense to kill him and keep him dead. Overall, I quite enjoyed X-Men 97, and I know someone always complains about how they made the show political. Honestly, if you're actually surprised by a piece of X-Men media having leftist leanings, there is a bare defecation location index that you are going to get so much more use out of than me. It's the woods. Oh my God. Can we get another Rescue Bots? Transformers Rescue Bots? Yeah, I know that show got a sequel series. That's not what I mean. Shut it. What I mean is, while not my favorite show ever, Transformers Rescue Bots is like the ultimate rebuttal to so many bad opinions I despise. And it's insanely cathartic to have a show in your back pocket that feels like it was made to agree with you constantly. Example. Yeah, cartoons are for babies. They don't have to be mature or have themes, and you're dumb for thinking so. Have I mentioned Rescue Bots? It's a show made to promote a line of toys for preschoolers, but the show itself was written with the 6 to 10 demographic in mind. They literally had no reason to do that, but they did. It has serialized plotting. No preschooler would appreciate that. This baby show was made for older fans to appreciate and for parents to enjoy with their kids. That's nice. Yeah, all Transformers shows should look like the original G1 show, because as we all know, everything in this franchise is awful except G1. You're an idiot, and I haven't seen my feet since my spouse left. Have I mentioned Rescue Bots? Every Autobot in this show is basically an original character, unless they literally come from a different show, like Sideswipe, Bumblebee, Optimus. Even if they use pre-existing names, the only 2 characters who are overtly based on an existing one are Blades and Blur. And even then, neither of those 2 look or even act that much like their namesakes. And you know what it costs the show to do that? Absolutely nothing. If anything, it's better for its flagrant disregard of what came before. Yeah, cartoons or little kids are worthless. Only the edgy and mature stuff matters. I wrote a novel in 7th grade and it had more cusses than prepositions, so I don't know why it didn't take off. Have I mentioned Rescue Bots? By many measures, it's the most successful show in this franchise that's been around since the 80s. It has more half-hour episodes than any single Transformer show. Unlike other Transformer shows so far, it got to 4 seasons without cheating. Even if it's not the darkest show in existence, there's still value. Can we get another show like that? A show that defies literally every expectation people have for it and is a complete and total success. Because I would like another show like that to exist. It's no secret that I want to make stuff, real cartoons, not just this show. And I mean, I've been stuck. I really want people to like the things I make, because why wouldn't I? Getting positive feedback is great. But at the same time, I really don't know if I want fandom in the typical sense. I mean, look at the show I made. I know how cartoon fans act. I've seen the worst kind of people. The ones that send death threats to cast and crew for whatever reason, with no repercussions because they never get repercussions. The ones that don't understand that animation takes time and who riot if they aren't cared for every 3 seconds. You know, the ones that think media literacy is some kind of exotic spice and can't even pick up on surface level themes. Or the ones that don't even listen to what point a show is trying to make if they think it might infringe on their own fragile values. Or the ones that will crucify you like Matthew Shepard if the thing you made doesn't satisfy what they want, even when the thing they want is, for lack of a better word, wrong. This has legit scared me off from being a content creator for years because I want success, but I don't want to open myself up to horrible people. Sure, I could be assuming the worst, but optimistic as I am, I've learned not to underestimate the level of awfulness that people can reach. Pretty much the only assurance I have that good people exist is the fact that I consider myself good, and I could be fooling myself for all I know. Look, for every good person, there's a horrible one that's about 10 times louder, and guess which one I end up hearing as the aspiring creator. I get that it's something I just have to put up with, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. Just be the bigger person. Being the bigger person shouldn't mean I have to tolerate more abuse. I figure if I see people like this everywhere, there's gotta be someone else. Much as I see the worst people, I know not everyone is like that. It's why I made this show in the first place, to show a little calm discourse about something that gets people very fanatical and rabid. And if that makes even one person who sees this even slightly interested in the things that define my creative career, then I've done a service. I want future projects, however they end up manifesting, to have fans. But I also don't want bad fandom. But for what it's worth, I know there's good fans out there. You guys, keep doing what you're doing. Which is to say, don't scare off aspiring creators. Remember those burning questions I ask at the start and end of each episode? That's painful coming up with them. You know what, just for fun, here's every answer to each burning question I've asked across all 10 episodes. In no particular order. I sure hope not. I'm sure I'll find it somewhere. Yes, because children need to motivate themselves. No, but it's a good way to get kicked out of a casino. Yes. No, they meant the average BMI. A man. It's a trick question, you see. Yes, just don't tell his other personalities. Being a puny mortal like the rest of us. It's actually pronounced manslaughter, only if Bowser wasn't a class traitor, because Napoleon was technically Corsican. Nairobi. I'm pretty sure he found out from the memes, because English is barely a language. Nope, it runs on grief and nothing else. Yes, just ask because no one predicted World War I would be just cruel enough to put past wars to shame, but not cruel enough that we wouldn't give it a sequel. The rest are called Yoshi sores. And finally, dementia. Best of luck figuring out which answer is for which burning question. I'm gonna need a new running gag for next season. Transition. I guess that's it for Cartoon Gateway, tentatively for now, but who knows what happens. Did I entertain you? Did I inform you? Did I interest you in anything? I wouldn't know. I'm just a guy who wanted to make something fun, to talk about the things I like, because I've got aspirations, and if I follow them, whether I succeed or fail, I'll never get the chance to make something like this again. This has been Cartoon Gateway. I'll always be your host, David Hollander. Tune into any other episode where we won't answer your burning questions, like, what is the capital of Kenya?
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.